Hey, what's up, everybody? Mark here from the Epic Personal Trainer podcast, and welcome to session number 5 about cancellation policies. And, do you really need one as a personal trainer? So, to start off with, what is a cancellation policy? Well, there are kind of two parts to this. The first part is, what happens when a client cancels a session or when they give very short notice about not being able to make a session. Will the client still pay for that, for example? Sometimes it depends on the conditions and the reason that they give. The other part of this, though, is say, for example, that something at work comes up and the client can't continue mid program. What happens then? Maybe they injure themselves outside the gym or get kind of a long-term illness that hits them. So what does happen in these kinds of scenarios? Well, really, that is totally up to you. But you will need to be realistic with your processes. Otherwise, no clients are going to register with you. Now, for most trainers, they're going to be concerned about the first part, which is when a client either does not turn up or comes late or cancels within a certain time frame. A lot of trainers, as a typical rule of thumb, have a cancellation policy of 24 hours or less, means that the client would still be charged for the session. This can be important for the trainer because, clients are more likely to turn up, and if they turn up more, they're going to get better results. So in theory, it can help, keeping renewals on time and overall retention for a client. Now, as a trainer, you can set out any rule you want for this, but you have to get the balance right between incentivizing a client to be regular and respecting your time without turning it into some kind of punishment for missing a session, which might drive your client away. For example, if you enforce a 24-hour rule, if a client's car breaks down on the way to the gym, or, if a client suddenly falls sick overnight, you probably look like a bit of a monster if you did still charge them. But here's the thing. Even if a client kind of feels like they couldn't be asked to come to the gym that day, they can just say, their kid is sick and you'd be none the wiser. I know some people out there that believe, if you find the right clients, then you won't ever need a cancellation policy. So it's not needed because they're just going to be perfect clients. They're going to turn up every day early and they're never going to miss a day or a session. But at the end of the day, clients are not perfect. They have too many kinds of external influences, whether it's work or family or kids or whatever it is. I think most trainers at some point as well have had an issue with, maybe an alarm, maybe they slept through, maybe the power went out in the night, all sorts of reasons that don't happen very often, but they do happen, and even to the best of us. So, for an honest mistake, do you really want to punish a client? Because that's kind of what you need to think about. You have the right to enforce, and you can be really strict and charge somebody for not turning up, for one session. But if that's their first session out of 45 they've taken with you, do you really want to potentially spoil that relationship you have by charging them for something so strictly? And at the end of the day, if they are genuinely going to be a very regular, hardworking, committed client, you could be sacrificing far more money and relationships and referrals and results for the client in the long run for the sake of just that 1 hour. So you kind of need to put it into a little bit of context as to whether you're going to enforce your cancellation policy or not. So in certain situations, it can be difficult to even use a cancellation policy. So why do I recommend that, you have your client sign one? Well, first off, it helps you to set the scene. And if you've listened to session number 2, which is about the 4 things that should be included in a client consultation, you would know that one of the things I talk about is setting the scene. If you haven't listened to that, go back and have a listen. You're going to hopefully find it really useful. So setting the scene is basically you creating the right environment and the mindset within your client for the process of what is to come. It's helping them to understand that this is a process and that they have to be committed to it and consistent with it. The more we can drive that point home, the higher the chances that you will have a more consistent client. So even after we do hit this point in a client consultation, we can emphasize the point again in our cancellation policy, which will help open their eyes even wider to the fact that this is important and their success can depend upon it. Now, in an ideal world, we would be signing up the perfect client. these people would always be regular and stick to the plan. They would be the people that really value you and your time and your expertise, and also their own commitment and hard work to their own journey. But for many people, that's just not how we behave. That's just not what most humans are like. We have to consider, good old human behavior. Some people have lives outside of the gym. Well, everybody does really, with work and family. And no matter what we do or say, training is just never going to be a top priority for them. So apart from setting a scene, you do have the ability to put your policy to work for clients that don't fit well with the system. All right. So why is that a good thing? Well, if you have a client that is kind of a repeat offender, then using this will put the ball in their court and force them into a decision. It will create a fork in the road where they will either get frustrated and leave, or they will use it as a wake up call and start to be more consistent with their sessions. So for you, it's kind of a win-win. Your client either becomes more consistent, which benefits both you and them, or they free up a slot for another person that will be more on board with the processes and have their chance of achieving their own personal goals. Okay, so, how do you set up and use a cancellation policy? Well, first off, we use them in a larger personal training agreement. So the cancellation policy is a section of that, and it'll outline other areas such as a disclaimer, what happens when you, the trainer, are late, or what the payment fees and structure is like. So, you need to keep a few lines in there stating your conditions that cover what happens when a client is late for a session, what happens if there are no show for a session, but also what happens when you are late for a session. And you'll also want to include something about what happens if the client or yourself wants to stop the training midway through the package. It's, a pretty standard thing to have a certain amount of days where after that, there are no refunds or transfers. Like how many days is up to you? I like to set it at about 3 days or so where, people can ask for a no questions asked refund. And this is because by that time, we've invested so much time and energy ourselves towards doing consultation, potentially doing a lot of research and writing the program and so on. What clients pay for when they buy personal training is a lot more than sessions. And at least good trainers will have all this other work outside of sessions that, you need to be compensated for. So by having that form, that cancellation policy, and by having that client agree to it beforehand, it just gives you that little bit of leverage that you can use as and when you want to. Okay. Clients can come to you with legitimate reasons, maybe some kind of emergency. Then obviously you don't have to enforce it, but at least with the form signed, you have the option. And the grand scheme of things, it's better to have a cancellation policy and not use it at all than it is to need one and never ever have it to hand. Okay, so if you want a cancellation policy, I have a template of one on the website. If you want to download that, it's completely free. It's completely editable as well, so you can turn that into whatever you want. The template is there and you can reword it, but you've got all the kind of things that you might need in it to get you started. If you want that, you can grab it over at www.epicpersonaltrainer.com/resources. And on that page, you'll find a personal trainer agreement and a bunch of other useful resources that can help you within your business. So that's it from me today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. And I'll hopefully see you in the next session. Bye for now.